Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock. I know a few people are probably entering the room, but we'll just take a moment to welcome you all. And I'm so glad that you're able to join us for this webinar today. It should be hopefully packed full of good information, and we hope that you gain a lot out of it. So welcome to the how-to guide to fundraising during times of crisis. This topic might be relevant to you and your organization right now. So let's see. So let me just briefly go over today's agenda. That way you'll know what to expect. You know, we have two wonderful guest speakers today from Candid, Krista Berry Ortega and Laura Bergman. In just a few moments, you'll hear their bios, and then we'll turn it over to them, and they'll present on the meat of today's topic, fundraising during the time of crisis. After that, we'll have a short reflection period with just a few questions that the San Manuel, the Strategic Philanthropy team created. So we're also interested in learning for today's topic and having this reflection period as well. And then at the end, we'll open it up for the Q&A period, so that way we'll be able to get all of your burning questions answered. And at the end, we have a few announcements for you, so stay tuned to the very end. And then, of course, the housekeeping information slide. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please post them in the chat box. Post as many questions as you have, as often as you want, and we'll try our best to answer all of them. The webinar is being recorded, and the webinar recording, the PowerPoint slides, and I think a couple of resources will be emailed out to you by the end of the week. So look forward to that. You can be on your Friday wish list before the weekend, and then that way you can listen to the recording on the weekends. And then the survey will be emailed after the webinar, and please take the time to complete the survey. It really only takes a few minutes, and your information is so valuable to us. In fact, some of the suggestions we got are actually, we're using them to shape October's webinar. So please, feel free to give us more suggestions, and then we ask that you remain muted during the presentation, and then you can turn your camera off if you're not speaking. It really just helps to improve the bandwidth. So especially if you're having any technical problems, any difficulties hearing, try turning your video off and see if that will help. So with that, I would like to say again, welcome, and I will turn it over to my colleague Fawn, who will do guest speaker introductions.
Thanks, Heidi, and good morning to all. I have the pleasure of introducing our friends from Candid, including Krista Berry Ortega and Laura Bergman, who will be handling today's presentation. Krista Berry Ortega is Programs Manager West, a part of Candid's Social Sector Outreach Programs team. She delivers in-person and online trainings, including free and fee-based workshops and customized trainings in the western region of the U.S., a territory of 13 states. She also contributes to the curriculum design process of their programs, contributes to the team's impact evaluation efforts, and serves as a subject matter expert for her region. Krista is recognized as an innovative leader and has more than 17 years of diverse nonprofit experience from organizations in San Diego and New York City. Her specific areas of expertise are nonprofit management, philanthropy, and community development, with professional achievements in scaling organizational impact, developing successful teams, directing fundraising operations and business development, designing successful programs and special events, and leading culture change and transitions. Krista earned an MS in Urban Affairs with a concentration in nonprofit management and public policy from Hunter College in 2006, and a BA in theater with a minor in education from Marymount Manhattan College in 2001. In addition to Krista, we have Laura assisting with the presentation today. Laura Bergman is a social sector librarian at Candid. She teaches classes on how to use Foundation Directory online in the context of prospecting for grants, and answers online questions about general nonprofit fundraising. Laura has served the nonprofit sector for 25 years as a nonprofit executive director, development director, and program designer. Before joining the Foundation Center, now Candid, Laura worked at the California Arts Council, the Exploratorium Museum, and Z Space Theater, where she currently volunteers as board president. Thank you, ladies, for being on the webinar today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. I found my unmute button. Thank you, guys. It is quite an honor to be here. I wanted to make sure that, yeah, Laura, did you say hi too so you get on screen?
Yes, I did. Hello.
Woo! It's quite an honor to be here and for you to read those long bios. I think they've updated a lot. It's been quite a year. So a lot has changed at Candid, a lot has changed in our roles, and we have been delivering online trainings just like this that we're doing for you all around the country. So it's exciting to be here in SoCal where I am based. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quiet moment. We're going to speak a lot and we're going to throw a lot at you in a short amount of time. But I need it myself. There's a lot going on around us. There are fires around us. Folks are going back to school or helping kids go back to school. We've got an election in the middle of a pandemic. We've got civil unrest with fighting for racial injustice around the country. Folks are not well, and it's kind of a crazy time. So I'm just going to take a quiet moment and we can all center ourselves and kind of be present for the time that we're going to be here together. I'm going to just close my eyes for a second. Inhale, feel free to join me. Exhale. Take a moment. I'm expressing gratitude to you all that I get to do this job with my amazing colleague, Laura, and all of you. And it's an amazing opportunity to be helping nonprofits with missions that you're all doing. So first of all, thank you for being here and for being with us and for all the work that you're doing in your own missions and nonprofits at this crazy time. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we do at Candid, and then we're going to jump into what we hope is some really helpful practical tips on fundraising. Basically, what is Candid? If you've heard of Foundation Center or GuideStar, we're going to talk a little bit more about GuideStar later. We joined forces in 2019 to become one organization called Candid. We are a nonprofit organization, just like all of you. We are based in New York City, and together, both of these nonprofits have over 88 years of expertise and millions of data points that we're going to share a little bit about with you. Why does Candid exist? Because every year organizations and nonprofits spend a lot of money around the world. And what we do is we find where the money comes from, where it goes, and ultimately why it matters. So we do a lot of work in analyzing the work that you're doing. And that's how we have all these resources to be able to help you. And we do that through training, collaboration. We've got research reports. Ultimately, that's part of Laura and my job is to be with you and to be working with Manuel to help you get the resources that you need to do the good work that you're doing. Oh, I guess I left this slide in here too. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We've got newsletters, but really our partnership with Manuel is going to help you get all the information that you need in the future about Candid. We are committed to some learning objectives here today. So we're going to talk about tools that help you find potential funding opportunities and that align with your mission. We're going to share some best practices on building relationships with funders and writing some grant proposals. And we're going to describe how information from your profile on GuideStar, and don't worry if you don't know what that is yet, because we're going to tell you all about it, helps to inform your donors and gives you opportunities to find additional funding. So as we know, we're in the middle of a bunch of crises, if you will. That's why we decided to keep this broad. It's not just a pandemic. And so it's pretty exciting that we work for such an amazing nonprofit where as soon as the pandemic hit and as soon as these issues have come up around the globe, we've got teams at Candid that have gotten to work to essentially provide more resources to you. Laura, I think, just dropped some of these links into the chat. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and share some of the pages. We've got Two really important pages that we have teams just kind of scraping the internet and updating on a regular basis. One around kind of COVID-19 resources for nonprofits and funders, and also our racial equity resources. So let's see if I can do this share perfectly. Maybe that's too high of a bar. Perfect. There we go. Let's go back to the coronavirus page. So hopefully you should have access to these links in the chat. And then I recommend just kind of bookmarking them on your page so you can go back. This is our response to the coronavirus COVID page, where we update it almost hourly when we're all working, definitely daily, and weekly it continues to get updated. There are summaries up at top and more information, but what you really want to know is some of this funding information. And that, wow, I think this already went up since I put my PowerPoint together. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint and confirm. But essentially to date, we've seen and tracked, it's for over $14 billion have gone out to COVID funding relief. That's over 13,000 grants, over 9,000 recipients, just like you, maybe you've even got some of these, and over 1,000 funders have come together to respond to this crisis and this health pandemic that we have. This page is so cool. So I'm not going to go over it in detail because you can really interact with it yourself, but you can see it has top recipients and top funders. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have given 9 grants totaling, that's a big number, 529 million. Woo! It adds up. So there's a funding map here that you can play around with. We've got funding opportunities that we are regularly updating that you can apply for. And then our team on the training side is providing regular webinars like this, but also there's other topics coming up that are free. We are doing all this stuff for free to make sure that you have the resources that you need, and that's really relevant information. We've got news stories, so a bunch of really great stuff, blog posts that Candid folks are writing and external folks are writing. So definitely check that out, because you're gonna, if you do have an organization that is being impacted by COVID, there's a lot of great resources here that we don't want you to miss out on. Same thing for racial equity. Really, it was the Candid staff that right after George Floyd's murder, it really sparked a new wave of advocacy within our organization to say, we've been doing work on this, but we really need to do more. And senior leadership got right on board with it and decided that we need to create a page just like we had for the coronavirus on funding for racial equity. So if your organization might be in these categories, or if you're interested in seeing where the money's going and other news and commentary, we actually have a whole team that recently got put together just to look at specifically race and policing and gun violence. So some of these areas are new, and we're still really diving deep to do better research to provide you all resources. There's some funding landscapes here, and just in the last week since I have updated my PowerPoint, this went from 10 billion to 10.1 billion in total dollar of grants provided for this racial equity movement. And I don't know if anyone saw the news a couple weeks ago, but there's the Mackenzie Scott grant or commitment, which really tipped those numbers over. She committed over $500 million to support this work as well. And you can see where the recipients are, and the list goes on. So a lot of really great resources that we want to make sure that you have access to. Laura, I think I saw that you shared all of those in chat. Is that correct?
Yes, I sure did.
Yay, awesome. So I already covered that. Yeah, it did go up from 13 billion. I wanted to share a couple other stats that we kind of have highlighted here now that you have access to the links yourself. As of August, there you go. The number was 13.9. I think it went up. About 2/3 of this support comes from corporate funders. So something to think about when you're thinking about your prospects and who you might want to reach out to. Particularly financial services and tech companies are the ones that we're seeing are giving to the COVID grants. Community foundations are especially active now. They've given over $1 billion. And there's a link there. You might have already looked into the emergency charity stimulus bill, but there's a lot of focus and push for more support for nonprofits just like you out there as well. So keep an eye on additional support that you might be able to access for your organization at this time. Half of the small grant makers are giving more, so that's a good sign, because sometimes you think, well, if they don't have, tons of money and giving out some, are they a good prospect for me to go and fundraise to? Yes, they are. Beyond their existing grantees, 2/3 of these small grant makers have made their grant guidelines more flexible, which is something that we advocate for and really tell funders that is important, is making it more flexible, giving people extended deadlines. Some grants we would have had to fax in or mail in a report, and a lot of us aren't in the offices. So how can those funders make them more flexible for us, knowing that we're working from home and working with less resources? The other good news is that 5 of the largest funders have committed to increasing their payout rates. And there might be a resource link a little bit more on what payout rates are, Laura, to drop in there. But these are some of the foundations. And basically, they're just being asked to give more. That's the short answer of what increasing their payouts rate means. They don't have to, but they are. They're going above and beyond to give more money at this time. They always say they're saving their money for, that rainy day or that big crisis. Well, this is it. And funders are really stepping up, which is great. As you can see, the numbers for racial equity has already gone up. Over 6,000 foundations have committed. And as I already shared, we have tons of resources on diversity, equity, and inclusion related education and content. So please make sure to check that out. Okay, how am I doing on time? Yay, we're good. So a little bit about, those are some of our resources, dive into that. A little bit about how to create and build the relationship with the funder we're gonna cover, and then we're gonna give you some other places to find grants if you don't already know. So first thing, do your homework. That's why we're providing all these links for you. You may already know this, or you might have an example of something that when you did your homework, it went really well with the funder. Well, that's what we're talking about. Really know the funder. We always hear in classes that we teach, oh, my board told me to go get that Facebook guy and ask him for money. And it's yeah, okay, they have money, that they're a foundation. Zuckerberg Chan Foundation. They might be a good funder for you, but it's really important to do your homework and figure out what do they fund? What are they interested in? Are you the right match? So yes, exactly, Laura. Feel free to just jump in too. I think we actually have that on the slide.
Probably. I was just going to say the number one reason that a funder turns down a grant is because it wasn't a fit. It's not because your grant wasn't perfectly written or because they're out of money or all the reasons that we might think. It's really because the fit is not there.
Yeah. So it's why are you putting your time into that? We know writing grants takes a long time and you have to wait and you have to pull all these documents together. And so really making sure that it's the right fit and the right match is so critical. Oh yeah, there we go. I love when it's animated. So some of the questions that you should ask are who funds in my area of interest and the population that I serve? Who funds in the geographic region? Some funders are very specific. They only want to fund in a very specific geographic region. So it might be cool that Laura knows of this foundation that is up in the Bay Area. Laura's up in the Bay Area, but they might not be interested in funding folks down in SoCal in your county. So really make sure that you understand what they're interested in funding and who will provide the support that you need, right? Another way to do that is go on other organizations' websites. They don't even have to be considered your competitor, but are they similar organizations to what you do, or do they share a similar type of mission, and see if they have a page of folks that are funding them. Asking for the right amount is also critical.
Another thing too, Krista, just
yes.
Not to interrupt, but people, the best way to also see what they fund is what they have funded. That's the number one way to see what they fund, because a lot of times when you do the research, it says, oh, we don't fund specific things. But then when you look at who they've actually funded, if you looked at their 990, or if you went on FDO, which is our funding database of organizations, you could see that actually they did fund things that are not in their purview. And that can be for several different reasons, but what that means is you could be in the right ballpark. So it could be because they have donor advised funds if it's a community foundation, or it could be because maybe a board member just happened to want to fund a specific project. So I think aside from doing the research and looking at what they say their guidelines are, I think it's important to also look back to see what they actually did fund.
Yep. And that's why these pages that Candid that we're creating now is so critical, because some databases, they take a little longer to update out there. And we really try to make sure that our data in our kind of resources is the most up to date, because things have changed this year. So looking at the history and then kind of layering in and doing your research on what they're doing right now and asking the right amount, oops, there we go, is really important too, because for example, if the grant is, they're only giving out $50,000 and you're asking for 2 million, they're going to be like, are they really reading and like paying attention to what we're doing here? And that's way out of the guidelines for what the grant might have been given. And so it's hard to think how they might fit their grant into such a large amount that you're asking for. So it's okay to be like excited and think about the big vision. Maybe you have a $2 million campaign that you're working on and you're asking them to fund this specific part, right? So really asking for the right amount, or same thing as Laura explained, like doing your research and figuring out what the right amount might be is really important.
And one thing to add about that too, just to pile on, is that funders don't generally like to see that they are the only foundation being asked. So you have to show a diversity of income coming in, whether it's earned income or whether it's contributed. But generally speaking, if they're making an investment in your nonprofit, they don't want to be the only risk taker. So if they're making an investment, they want to see that you've also asked a lot of other foundations and potentially already have some committed money, so that if something goes awry, it won't just be on them.
Yep. Or if you're collaborating with another nonprofit and you're kind of combining resources, another really great leverage point for funders that they want to know. Thank you, Laura. You don't need to know someone to get a grant, obviously, but it can really help. And I think the important, we were going to say takeaway at the end, I'm giving it to you right now. The important takeaway is building relationships now is still important. It's still critical. Are we building relationships a little different? Yes, we're, not going out and knocking on the door, if you will, or having as many coffee meetings, but we still need to build relationships. And there's a human on the other side of a grant proposal. There's a human on the other side of a corporate CSR program. So there's always a human element into the funding, no matter, where you're going to get your funding from. So it's important to really know where you can find a connection with folks. You can do that through your board members or your donors. Laura is also an active board member in an arts organization in the Bay Area, and she knows how important it is as a board member to be involved, and as a donor board member to connecting the organization with other funders. Organizational partners are really important, like we were just talking about, other nonprofits that you might be working with. As Laura just said, your current funders might have connection to other funders. They might be in a funder network, like you're in a nonprofit fundraiser network that they might be able to refer you to. And it's amazing how much LinkedIn has really changed our networking world, and everyone's on LinkedIn. And that's something that you can do, from the comfort of your home office. So it's always important to kind of make that contact and build that human relationship, because you never know what kind of other opportunities you're going to get through that. Some other grant seeking tips specifically during a time of crisis is to communicate. And I'm glad I said it 3 times so I could get it right. Communicate. When we first started this pandemic, and frankly, we do a lot of programs, so we interact with nonprofits a lot. They're still asking us, do we keep fundraising? Yes, keep fundraising. What is fundraising? Building relationships and communications. So you want to communicate before, during, and after the crisis. This has been an ongoing crisis, so I don't know when after is going to be. So we have to keep communicating with our donors, with our supporters, with folks that have given us money, and with folks that we're building relationships with that we might want to ask for money. We want to avoid generic mass email solicitations. People want, again, that relationship with you. So there's nothing wrong with some campaigns that are going to everyone, but the more you can segment your list and really understand what types of communications you're sending to what funders or what donors, the more they're going to feel, kind of connected to you. I'm also going to add here to this, because I think we need another bullet here. Yes, we're in a digital age, and we're going to talk about how important your presence online is, but like mail is still cool. right? I actually think mail is even cooler. Like all the stuff that's in my mailbox right now is either bills or junk, really. There's nothing like fun. So when I get something fun from a nonprofit that I know is a little tailored towards me, or even like a thank you note, it just stands out these days. So don't forget that a little bit of that kind of personal snail mail can be a really important strategy in communications as well. I think Laura just added to the chat, check in, extend gratitude. They want to know how you're doing. They want to know, they want to know that you care how they're doing is the point. Seeing if you're in a crisis, they're probably in a crisis themselves. So always extending gratitude. I was talking to a student recently and she's like, I got to meet this goal for new prospects. What should I do? And I'm like, say thank you to everybody that you already know, because if you're thanking the people that you already know, they're going to be the first ones that are going to introduce you to someone new. So
also, somebody asked, should I be communicating with our funder how we're adjusting our management style / operations with COVID-19? And the answer is a big yes, definitely. They want to hear from you. They want to know how it's going. And frankly, it's okay to not be okay and say, we're struggling, we're not sure what's going to happen next, but here's what we are doing, and we're optimistic about such and such. I mean, that's part of the conversation. That's part of developing the relationship with the funder.
100%. It's so important. If you are checking your Gmail these days, I have several, and some of them I'm totally blocking. Folks are using their email addresses and mailing lists to send you stuff all the time. There is competition out there, and you want to stay top of mind to your donors and your funders, your corporate funders, your foundation funders. You want to stay top of mind. If they don't hear from you, they're probably going to assume the worst, or they're going to assume something, and then it's not your story. So share what you're learning, share what you're doing to manage this crisis. Like Laura said, even if we're not okay. We probably need to have a meeting with our board. I know Laura experienced that, in a lot of organizations have been having meetings just to figure out what to do. And why not invite a funder to that process if it's appropriate? And really talking about how you're serving the mission. We know that not all of you are specifically addressing the coronavirus or racial equity, but these issues and these crises that are happening all around us are affecting your organization. If you're an after-school program, then the pandemic has affected how you operate a child development program, right? So it's important to really continue to share your story, not using the pandemic like that. Someone was like, isn't that icky? I'm like, no, don't be icky about it. Just have some other folks, don't be the only one that's writing the communication, have some other folks chime in, have a nice diverse group that's making sure that your strategy fits the organization mission. But it's okay to address what's actually going on. And if you're not, then it actually might go the other way and feel kind of tone deaf. And so some resources, right? We said we're going to get to more resources. So yes, I shared the coronavirus page earlier. There are, as I shared, RFPs on there. If those are relevant for you, there are also relief funds that are probably still available out there. So make sure that you're doing your research and asking other folks how they're funding their organization. We also have, as Laura explained, this foundation directory online, and some of you may have used it. You have a local, what we call funding information network partner, and we can get you more information as a follow-up. But in the past, Foundation Directory Online would have been available to all of you for free through our Fin networks. So you would kind of walk in to the center, if you will, and be able to use this software for free in your region. Because of our partnerships, obviously a lot of these libraries or centers have had to close. So I'm going to get to the exciting news that I got to say, as a member of the Candid staff, is pretty exciting. We've basically made it available to all of you for free online, which is unprecedented. But basically what FDO is it's a searchable web-based tool, and it lets you find funders faster. Oh, that's cute. So you can spend more time building relationships with them, right? We were just talking about how it's important to build relationships with them. So tons of funders on there, tons of recipient information on there, grants that are on there. It's updated daily, which again, I can't really say for a lot of other databases. That's a really important feature for ours, is that it's up to date. And there are detailed profiles of funders, grants, recipients, other companies, so that you can really dive in and do your research and really drill down to the
And it will show you exactly who funded what. So that's what I was talking about earlier. When you're doing your homework, it will tell you exactly who they funded. There's also a who's who section where you can actually see who is on the board or staff of a particular foundation. And that way, if you, let's say, I've had people when I was, now I'm not an online librarian anymore, but when I was, people would come into the foundation center when we were that, and they would say, they would print out a list of who was on the board of a foundation, and they would go to their board meeting, give them this piece of paper and say, get on your LinkedIn. I want you to look at all these people and see if you have somebody in common that you can then make an introduction to. So the nice thing about FDO is if the person is on LinkedIn, there'll be a link to them. So you'll be able to know who's on and who's not. So it's a great resource for finding the connection.
Such a great resource. Some of you might be at larger organizations and you already have a subscription. First, go and find out if your organization does have a subscription, or if you have access to a subscription through, if you're a university, you might have a different department that might already have a subscription, or if you're part of a national brand, you might have access to it. But for those that don't, which we know is the majority, because we always hear that, it is available through our Funding Information Network partners. And we're going to show you how to access it online for free today. There are some self-serve resources. If you're interested, we have a FDO quick guide, help articles, YouTube videos. Laura is obviously on this because she is much more of an expert on how to use FDO than I am. So we have folks just like Laura that teach free classes on how to use it if you really want to kind of dig in and learn a little bit more as well. So we also have library staff that are free that you can contact anytime and chat with or email with any other Candid staff if you have any questions on FDO. Wait, did I skip over my cool slide?
Yes, you did.
Well, let's find it. There it is. I got so excited about telling you how to find resources that I forgot the important slide. So that's the link. It's probably already in your chat. This is where you can find it. There's a lot of different ways to access it. Here's the kind of caveat, all right? This is a subscription product and we're a nonprofit, so we're known for selling stuff. So it was a really big deal that our senior leadership earlier this year said, our nonprofits need this information now more than ever. They can't go into the library and get it for free like they used to. We're going to put this online and we're going to make it free for everybody. So they did that. It was supposed to expire in August. And obviously here we are in September and everybody's like, we still can't go back to the library or the, local capacity builder funding information network partner. So they just extended it to the end of the year. This is huge. I haven't worked at Candid that long, but I can tell you this is huge news that we've made this available to you and we want you to use it. It's not like an easy, quick link because it's made available to you through the local funding information partners. That's their job. So it looks like there are some links on who those folks are. We can help you figure out exactly where to find it and put it in the follow-up resources. Yeah, and
actually, so I put in the link and all you have to do is scroll down. There's a place you put in your zip code. You put in your zip code. It will tell you the nearest funding information partner network person next near you. And then from there, you'll have to access their website to get on to FDO. So that's the tricky part. Not everyone has it, so you just have to find the nearest one. If you have any trouble at all, you can chat us on Candid Learning at any time and just say, nearest FIN, my FIN partner, and they will help you. If you do between the hours of 6 and 2, it'll be a live person even, because that's our New York, those are our New York hours, but you can get someone to help you find the nearest FIN.
Yes, access all of the resources that we have. This is our mission, is to provide you these resources for free or as low cost as possible. So before we get to more Q&A, we also wanted to provide you some information on how to tell your story with GuideStar. We're going into kind of year-end giving season. This is historically when the most folks give at the end of the year. That's why we have annual campaigns. I don't know. We don't know how it's going to go, right? Like this is an unprecedented time. I can see that with some of the resurgence and like small donations by folks just like you and I, that people are interested and they're leaning in and want to give. So I wouldn't count us out yet. Okay. I think that's the other kind of my big tip or takeaway is, yeah, it's bleak. It's a hard time, but don't stop what you're doing because people are giving and there's some beautiful success stories out there. And GuideStar is one of the tools that can help you with that. So pop quiz. You can put it in the chat. How many active nonprofits do you think there are in the state of California? I see 10,000. What else, Laura?
Anybody else?
Any other guesses?
25,000? 15,868. That's hilarious.
That's very specific. Good.
50,000, 20,000, 17,000. Give us the answer, Krista. We can't wait.
Okay. It's 188 and 886,000. That's a lot of nonprofits, friends. That's a lot. Yeah, right? Wow. I know. I actually
close.
I double taped this because I was like, really, for real, California? I found this information in GuideStar free account, so you can go in and do your own research for pop quizzes like this. But the important thing that we want you to know is how to use GuideStar for your organization, right? So nonprofit accomplishments are the number one factor in establishing donor trust, followed by obviously their reputation and their finances. So again, the two companies came together, Foundation Center, we just talked about FTO, GuideStar, now we're all one. The profile, the GuideStar profile is pretty simple. You claim your profile if you haven't already, it's free. Every nonprofit has one, it's connected to your 990 and your tax ID number. So it's out there, frankly, whether you claim it or not. You can request access, then you go ahead and get approved. They just verify that you're a part of the organization to approve your access so you can go in. And then you can update away. You can tell your story right away. This is a free tool to all nonprofits that have this kind of tax ID number. So essentially the important part of this profile is that frankly, again, it's up there, but what it does is it goes beyond the IRS data that your donors and funders might be looking at. It provides other insights on millions of other nonprofits just like you. So there is kind of like a more equitable approach to funding, if you will, right? Because everyone, no matter what your resources, can have the same profile. And it allows funders to make better decisions based on what you're really doing versus, I don't know, your website or what they might know about you, et cetera, et cetera. There's meaningful data to move beyond and information from nonprofits just from you, yourselves. Obviously, the 990 data is going in there automatically, and there are other third-party sources that can add to your profile. Okay, click ahead. So your profile is what you make of it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I put the link in the chat so you can actually claim your profile. You just have to register, and it's free, and they'll give you exact directions on how to do that.
Brilliant, Laura. Thank you, guys. Bookmark all these right now, because I know as soon as you get off this, you're going to go answer all your emails, and then you're going to be like, what was that link again? So it's what you make of it. The one on the left is kind of like what it looks like if you've done nothing with it, okay? Nonprofit USA, it's going to be up there. It's going to filter the IRS data and the 990 stuff. But then you can go in, the one on the right with the lightning bolt, obviously, is like the one that we all are aspiring to be, and really add your story, your organization's kind of like ness. And it makes it even more of an amazing free resource that, frankly, you don't know who's looking at it. That's the reality.
And that's the thing, because as I mentioned before, and so did Krista, you're doing your homework on funders. Funders are doing their homework on you. And one of the ways that they do that is they go on GuideStar and they look you up and they see, do we have all your financial information? Do you have a history of success, or do you have a diverse board? Whatever it is they're looking for, they can find on these profiles. That's why it's important that you have it look the best that you can.
Yeah, and I just saw one of the questions that came in is, how often should you do it? I mean, it's really up to you. My first step is go look at it today or this week, especially since we're going into year-end giving. But frankly, and when I was a fundraiser and was kind of running the show, this would be something that I would put in my development plan to look at on a regular basis. Maybe back in the day, I did it quarterly. Definitely annually, right? Because you're doing your taxes and your financials. So if you're not doing it annually, yearly, as Laura just said, then that needs to be added. But
there's a big change in your organization. Let's say you have an all new board, or you've received a grant that you weren't expecting. Anything that you need to update, make sure it's updated, because the last thing a funder wants to do is look at your profile. It's outdated. They call you and you're like, oh, sorry, I haven't updated it. So it's important that whenever you have a big change, but at least yearly.
Exactly. Oh, sorry, Laura. I wanted to see what was next there. At least yearly. This is what the IRS form, this is this is how I started fundraising. The donor and the funder would ask us for the form, and it would start kind of looking like this after a while. Also good to know your 990. And we can actually add that as a potential topic for the future, is really understanding what a 990 is. I really learned what was on the 990 when I was an executive director, because I had to complete these with our accountants every year, and it was important to get these right. But the pros obviously are that they're comprehensive, standardized, and basic information, but these can be old data. They're too general, and they're not highlighting all the good programmatic work that you're doing, which the GuideStar profile can do. It adds all of your financials. If you partner with your accounting department or your CFO, it puts your financials in here in a beautiful space, so that all you have to do is send the link out. You don't have to add all these extra documents sometimes to packets that you're sending to donors, because it's all online and it's all available for them to see. It's basically like a different website for you and all this important information. You've got the operational information, another number of employees. We have this really cool program on seals of transparency. So basically, the more you add to be more transparent, the higher your seal is. You can put that on your website. We give you shout outs on social media. It's super cute. Oh yeah, I don't need to go into all the details, but obviously get more seals of transparency. That's important. And it really is important to really grow your online identity now more than ever. Folks are, as Laura said, doing their research before they meet you. So you want to update your profile, you want to claim it, you want to send fresh information out there. Other sources are finding you, and you might get kind of random gifts because your information is updated and people are looking. I get it all the time. People are like, Krista, do you know of a nonprofit that does this, that, and the other thing that I should give to? And you know what I tell them? Go on GuideStar, do your own research, girl. Like, seriously, there's so many organizations that I can't be the one to refer. You can add a donate button. You can celebrate your diversity. They built out this beautiful section recently where you can celebrate the diversity of your staff and your board demographics, because folks are really paying attention to making sure that your board is as diverse as the organization and mission that you're serving. So tons of great stuff there. And I want to tell you a story, more potential partners that you can get. I'll leave this up so you can look at it. A colleague of mine up in Portland was stewarding an individual donor earlier this year, and they're not in the kind of health or racial justice field. They're raising money for environmental causes. And so they were a little stressed out earlier in this year. Like, obviously this isn't the top priority, but we know it's an important organization. And so she was making an ask to an individual donor. She was getting ready to ask him for $250,000. And it was important that she got all of her ducks in a row. And she said, okay, the best thing I can do is just update my GuideStar profile, give him everything he needs, explain why this is still important in the middle of a pandemic, and kind of go from there. She gets to the kind of virtual meeting now, which is also stressful. Probably you want to get better at like practicing doing this stuff so you can make the ask online. And he basically cuts her off and says, hey, we want to double our gift this year because we saw your GuideStar profile before we came, and it's amazing what you guys are doing. All of your stuff is out there. We are super impressed with your professionalism. Instead of $250,000 this year, we'd like to double it to 500. Bam, done. Boop, drop the mic. No joke. Crazy. You just never know, okay? So make sure you use these resources. to have yourself available to either an individual donor like that or some of these companies that might be looking for a really great solution on how to make impact in the community by partnering with you. They want to help. You are helping them do more and do good. So never feel bad.
The more that they can just be lazy and just look it up. I mean, everyone's so busy, and if somebody at Salesforce has some money to give, the easiest that you make it on them, the more likely you'll get the funding.
It's so true. Like, it's kind of crazy to think of like the other side, right? As fundraising, we're like, it's the other side. But I was on a call with a friend at Southwest Airlines. They're having a pretty hard year. They're not giving as much. So you have to be mindful of crisis for corporations too right now. Like Southwest Airlines used to give a lot. Not many people are flying. Think about how they probably have less money these days. You can still ask, but you're going into this relationship kind of with that mindset that some of these companies that had this extra money to give might not have as much, but they might have connections or advice or other things that they can provide you, like professional development or whatever that might be. So making sure that you're, really developing that relationship with them, and they might know other people in their networks and their CSR networks that are like, you know what, I have an organization that is really looking to make an impact and I want to introduce you. Okay. How are we doing on time? Oh, we kind of made it.
Yeah,
Let's go to some.
Maybe time for some questions. That was a lot of information. I hope you're.
Oh no, I can't hear you, Laura. What happened, Laura? I can't hear you. So let me stop sharing so I can see what's going on here. As Laura said, there's a lot of questions and a lot of information, but for some reason I can't hear Laura. Are you back? Maybe. So Alberto, did you have some questions for us?
Yeah, I guess Krista and Laura, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Definitely learned a lot myself. I kind of wanted to break the glass a little bit and start off with the first question, and this is one of my interests. And I wanted to ask, how important is it for everyone across the nonprofit organization to know about fundraising or the importance of it? Some of the things that we see is that a lot of the time, some of our nonprofit partners think it's only the responsibility of development. But is it important for everyone to be a part of the fundraising efforts of the nonprofit organization?
I love this question, 100%. We should have done a poll. I don't know if it's too late to do it, Heidi. But maybe you guys can add it to the chat just so we can see who's here too. But creating a culture of philanthropy is critical these days. And yet it's also hard. I guess I just want to acknowledge that it can be hard because it is the development team's ultimate responsibility to bring in the money, but the development team can't do that. They can't tell the story, if you will, just like on GuideStar or even in person like this or on a grant application, without the programs team that does the amazing work, without the accounting and kind of operations team that moves the mission forward and keeps it churning and supported and successful. So everybody, it's like, I guess because I did theater, it's like there's never a small role. Every part is important to the play, if you will, or the mission. And so everyone should be involved in creating a culture of philanthropy too. I don't think everyone's job is to ask, though. That's my caveat. And we get questions like this. It's like I'm doing programming. I don't want to ask people for money. No worries, do you? But we want to include you in what the campaigns are, or are there volunteer opportunities that the staff can be involved in? Is there a way to give a percentage of your check back every month because you want to be involved in philanthropy of your own organization? We had oh, Laura's back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting some work done at my house, and so every once in a while I'm like, wait, can anyone even hear me? I don't know what's happening.
IRL, Laura, it's okay. It's in real life.
Okay, yeah.
Did you have something to add about creating a culture of philanthropy?
Yes, I was just going to add the other way to it's not as a program person, I agree with Krista, not everyone is asking, that's not everyone's role, but everyone should be thinking in those terms. So for instance, if you have a program, you should be thinking about ways to evaluate that program so that you could then report on whatever it is you're doing that's meaningful to funders. And that's something that a lot of times program people think of at the end when they're seeking money or trying to renew. They think, oh, well, how did we do this year? it's something that you should build in so that you, at the end of the year, it's not an extra added thing that you have to do. It's been built in. You can actually give some numbers.
I think we hit the, we could keep talking about this one. You got another half an hour?
No, I think that was great, and I think a lot of the information that you talked about on the GuideStar profile pretty much has to come from your program folks, from accounting and all those different divisions, right?
Yes, a lot of times the fundraiser is like the liaison to everything, right? And sometimes the fundraiser is the person that asks. Sometimes the fundraiser is like the organizer, or like, again, another theater analogy, like the stage manager, if you will, of getting the ask prepared. And that is, you've got to know how to have a good relationship with accounting. You've got to know how to have a good relationship with programs and with donors and with the board. So external folks. So yeah, there's a lot of different rules in fundraising, but I think that that's the important one is knowing where the resources come from and kind of pulling it all together, coaching everyone else.
Yeah.
Laura, and are there any other questions that we want to cover in the chat box that we want to add? I don't want to take away everyone's time.
No, that's okay. Actually, somebody mentioned a great tip, which is one of the things we do during the new employee onboarding process is we do a what is development training. That's a great one. That's one way to start the culture of fundraising from day one with whoever shows up at your door. I love it.
Yeah, as you're looking for some questions too, I wanted to share another story. Organization in Los Angeles, they were sharing how they have a health focus, and they brought all the employees together early in the pandemic and basically had them get involved in how they wanted to get involved in the issue, right? So sometimes if you tell people they're going to be involved in fundraising, you get a lot of like, ugh, that's not what we do. It's get involved in the issue. Do you care about the cause that your organization that you work at is, combating or making better in the world, and finding other ways how employees and other volunteers could get involved is a really nice way to start right now. Do it right now, getting everyone in the organization involved in fundraising as well.
And there are times when it's hard to get this is a whole separate issue. And actually we have some training on that that we can mention, but getting your board involved in fundraising is also something that is important to do early on. And it's not always the easiest thing because board members don't always know what to do, or they think, oh, I can't make cold calls. That's just not me. I don't want to do fundraising. But getting involved in just being an ambassador or going on calls with you when you're meeting with a major donor, or maybe mentioning some of their friends who might become major donors and then hopefully major donors. But there's a whole process to development that does not involve cold asking for money.
Yep.
Getting the board to know that early on and getting them involved early on will save you a lot of trouble in the long run.
Krista and Laura, and I wanted to share, I wanted to ask, what are some of the key takeaways that we want folks to, I know that one of our goals that we try to do is that we wanted folks to walk away from today's webinar with some key takeaways, right? So things that we can go back to our desk now and start implementing or talking about. Can you kind of share what those key takeaways are?
Yeah, hopefully I sprinkled them in, but don't stop fundraising is like my big one of the year. Because I continue to hear fundraisers or folks from nonprofits saying that they're on pause. And I'm like, why? You need this now. If you're on pause, what is that actually saying to funders? That maybe I don't know. I have so many reasons, so let's not go negative. Don't stop fundraising. Find ways to pivot, okay? Find ways to continue doing what you're doing and find ways to kind of mix it up. Like sometimes organizations are risk adverse. They're like, oh, this is how we've always done it, and we're scared to like try something new. Well, you know what? This is the best year to try something new. Go with what you think works and make some calculated guesses and try some things. So don't stop fundraising. What was my other tip that I added? Build relationships, right? We have to do that differently. But one of the things we do in one of our programs is we have the emerging fundraisers practice their pitches. And this is different. Like when we could do pitches in person, you have to practice because it just gets super awkward when you're sitting there and you're like, I have to ask them for money. But now we have to figure out how to do that online. So I invite all of you after you get off this call to do what we're doing, schedule a WebEx meeting or whatever platform that you have with a board member or a friend or a colleague, and practice talking about the work that you're doing. So then when you're ready to actually get on a call with a funder to talk about a grant that's coming up, or someone introduces you to someone and you need to, do a little elevator pitch, then you're ready and you feel confident. Anything else, Laura? Any other?
Yeah, I just posted a link. Somebody was asking about creating online versions of traditional fundraisers. So I just posted a link. Candid Learning did do a training on virtual events. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's it now in the chat. And then another person asked, any advice on searching for grants that support training of the people who provide the direct services in a niche addiction as opposed to providing the actual services? I've found that most grant guidelines say they only support the direct service.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a tough one. I actually worked for an organization. Well, I do now, actually, if you think about it. I still work for one. Yeah, we're in like the capacity building space, Candid is. And I worked for an organization that was similar. We provided childcare development folks training on how to include kids with disabilities. And a lot of times, the funders wanted to be the ones that were funding the kids with disabilities, right? And we had to kind of tell a different version of our story to explain why for every one child development professional that we train, they impact this many people or kids in this situation in their life. So go back to your resources. My first answer is go back to your resources and kind of think through how you're telling your story. And is there a way to update your story given everything that's going on right now on, again, why that's so critically important now. And then I will say, after fundraising in Southern California, it's hard. I wouldn't depend on grants to solely fund that work. You want to make sure that you have a good diversity of revenue from different types of funders, and individuals is going to be a huge opportunity for you. Because they're not going to need the whatever that is, the ROI for their area focus, like the foundation or the corporate funder might. So engaging your board members and meeting new individuals that see how important it is. Don't leave the volunteers out, you guys, or the people that you've served. If you've been in business for 10 years and you served a child, they're 10 years older, they might be able to get it because they know how important the mission is. So really don't leave anyone out when you're thinking about who individual donors are these days.
And the only other advice I would give for that is every once in a while, if you're, let's say, on our database, Foundation Directory Online, we have a keyword search. So if there is something that's very niche related, you could do a keyword search and see, maybe there's a whole different foundation that you hadn't even heard of that funds that exact thing. So that's one other idea.
Yeah, and final thought on that, sometimes partnerships are the way around kind of more of a niche mission. So you might be partnering with those kind of service delivery, and they might have access to different funders as well. So we have to kind of get over this, like we're in competition. Yes, there is competition of choices out there, but some of the best fundraising I ever did was thanks to my colleagues, my friends that were doing fundraising in the same area. So don't stop investing in your own professional development and going to networking opportunities that will allow you to meet each other. Today is kind of like data information, blah, but there's other, AFP or other types of organizations that will give you networking opportunity with each other. Create a really cool partnership and go after a big grant together. And you're a part of it as like the capacity builder.
So Krista, I think we need to hand it over to Heidi.
Wrap it up, Krista.
No, that was great information. Don't wrap it up, but we do need to give Heidi a turn and close this out. We don't want to go over time. We want to respect everyone's time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll actually turn it over to my colleague Gina to wrap up. And
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Thank you, Krista and Laura, for all the information you provided today. As a reminder, we will be sending out the recording of the webinar and slides by the end of this week. And we also want to announce our next webinar, which is scheduled for October 7th. And the topic will be on establishing a healthy grant portfolio. Details with the registration information will be sent out in the next few weeks. So please, if you're interested, register for the next one. We also want to announce we have a new website, sanmanuelcares.org, and you will be able to find the recordings of the webinar on this website also. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks again.